Alright guys, it's been about a year and a half since my most prized possession has been stolen from me. My 1963 Studebaker Lark. If you guys have been following the channel for a while, you know that my first car was a 63 Studebaker Lark, and we featured that car pretty heavily on this channel throughout the years of, building up our subscriber base. That car was with me since I was 16 years old, and we've done countless combinations on the car. But in April of last year, the car was stolen from me along with my truck and my parents' enclosed trailer. We were on our way back from the Grassroots Motorsports Challenge, and we stopped to stay at a hotel for the night. And when we woke up, the truck, trailer, and car were all gone. And you guys have shown us a lot of love and support from this whole situation, and for that I'm very thankful. But we get comments every once in a while for any updates on the car, any updates on the situation, and I felt like it was time to give you guys one. As far as the car, we've heard nothing. My guesses are the car is likely been cut into a million pieces, or it's sitting in somebody's barn or out in the woods somewhere where nobody can find it. And it will probably sit there for a good while longer until the smoke clears. The trailer, I don't think there's any hope of getting that back, but the truck actually was located. It had been sitting in a junkyard for around 2 months when I guess somebody finally ran the VIN number on the truck and they found that it was stolen. I did call the junkyard that had the truck and asked them if there was anything inside of the truck. They replied with yeah, there was interior. Do you want to buy the interior? I was a little put off by this. No, I didn't want to purchase my own interior from you, being that it's definitely not their interior to sell. But 2 people were arrested. Unfortunately, they were dead quiet. They wouldn't speak. And nothing else has come of that situation. I've done thousands of internet searches looking for any scrap of evidence on the car. I've looked for parts on various parts websites. I've looked for any scrap of that car that they may have tried to pawn off. I've used whatever resources I could to try and find any piece of the car. And I know a lot of you guys out there have been doing the same. I get messages frequently from people saying, is this your supercharger? Is this your transmission? Tons of you have been very supportive in that way. And I gotta say, a huge thanks. It's been a little sad having to reflect on the situation on a frequent basis. It's been a little discouraging that nothing has come up, but I'm super grateful to you guys for keeping an eye out for the car. And we're not giving up on the car. If the thing were to be found, I would go and get the thing right this second in a heartbeat. But I think it's time to move on. So as you guys may or may not know, along with the truck and the trailer and the car, they also stole every single t-shirt that we had for sale. This was a huge setback, and it made it very, very hard to work up the courage to try to start the t-shirt business once again. But I'm excited to announce to you guys that we're back up and running. And one of the first shirts that we are bringing to you guys is this one that I'm wearing right here. This is the Remember the Stude shirt. This is sort of to commemorate the memory of the Stude. And who knows, maybe you will help me find the car. Maybe you'll be wearing this t-shirt at a car show and somebody will say, hey, I know where that car is. Believe me, I'd love to have the car back. And this would be a great way to show your support for the channel. I'm super grateful to you guys. So links will be in the description. We will be offering t-shirts in black as well. Links will be in the description. So that's the update on the theft. I don't have a whole lot more to say other than that, but there's a reason that I'm standing in front of this car for today's video. If you guys have been following the channel, you know that we are building this 1957 Chevrolet, and this is kind of my dream car. And we've been building the car for the Six Smokies Drag and Drive, and for me, this will be the replacement for my Studebaker. Now, as you guys know, the Studebaker was kind of my science experiment. We had a ton of different combinations in that car. We had almost every generation of the small block Chevrolet in the car. We had a Gen 1 small block with Gen 2 cylinder heads, a Gen 3 LS, and a Generation 5 LT. We also installed a Vortec 4200 into the car with a turbo. We've had an automatic combo, we've had stick shift combos, we've had supercharged combos, we've had naturally aspirated combos. So over the years, I've had a lot of experiences that have led me to forming a preference of what I like to have in a car like that. And that brings me to this car here. This car is being built to sort of capture an era in time. I'm taking the best parts of my Studebaker and implementing all of them on this car. Now, I have always been an inline six guy, but I gotta say that the Generation 5 LT series engine in the Studebaker was probably my favorite. It had the best street manners, it had the best packaging that made it easy to work on, and it was overall an excellent combo. The problem with it was it didn't rev high enough. And as we have been getting into these North Star engines more and more heavily, I have made the comment many times that if I had the choice of what car I wanted to put the North Star into, it would have been my Studebaker. Unfortunately, that's not possible, so why not put it in its replacement? Next, let's talk about the power adder or lack thereof. On my Studebaker, we tried naturally aspirated with that 5.3 liter LT engine, and that was definitely not up to the task. Then we installed a supercharger onto the car, and yeah, that was fun, but my ultimate preference is a turbocharger. I love how the power is delivered, and I love the noises that come from a turbocharger. And we actually almost put a turbocharger on that Gen 5 LT, but I decided not to because it was right after my dad had his really bad wreck, and I was a little bit gun shy from running big horsepower. I've since kind of reconciled with that, and that is why we are going to put a turbocharger on this North Star V8. In fact, the turbocharger that is on this car is the exact turbocharger that I was planning to install on that Gen 5 LT, so here we are. Next, let's talk about the transmission. As you guys know, I had just installed a brand new TKX 5-speed transmission on my Studebaker. I love the way that the car drove, I love the way it cruised down the highway, but that was a really expensive investment. Frankly, I would never spend that money on a transmission setup like that ever again. For your average street car, it's fantastic, but for what I was going for, it didn't meet my expectations. We got it to do some impressive stuff right before the car got stolen. But in the future, if we do a manual transmission build, it will be with a face-plated transmission and likely with a slipper clutch, and more on that in the future. The last thing was the rear suspension. We had just changed the car over to a torque arm rear suspension, and I gotta say, I much preferred the traction bar / slapper bar setup that was on the car for most of its life. I loved the way that the car left, and that is why we are installing that style of suspension on my 57 Chevy. I am super excited to get this thing onto the track, and I hope it leaves just like my Studebaker did, but we'll have to find out and see. So while we're talking about my 57 Chevy, let's get into some updates since the last time that you saw it. As you guys saw, we were just starting to build the cage out on this car, but we hadn't completed it. So let's go to some footage where we got the thing all wrapped up. Building a cage definitely requires a lot of planning. It is critical to plan out which joints you plan to weld at which times, because it's very easy to weld yourself into a corner. You really don't want to put yourself in a situation where you've welded the cage completely to the car and now you can't get the torch into the spot that you need it to, because all of the joints in the cage have to be 100% welded. As you can see, we had the cage moved all around inside of the car in order to accomplish that. And you're also going to notice that I am jumping from joint to joint and sort of going back and forth across the cage. With chromoly steel, you have to be careful not to overheat the material because it will become brittle if you do. So it's a good idea to jump around to different parts of the cage and make sure that you let the thing cool off a little bit before you throw more heat at it. I should probably also be wearing long sleeves in this video. I've been trying to get better at that, and I know a lot of you guys have left comments about that, but I'll try to do better in the future. Now that the cage was wrapped up, we moved on to implementing the plans that we laid out for the rear suspension.
Oh, there it goes.
The first thing that we had to knock out was the leaf spring relocation kit. I showed off this nice kit that I had bought in the previous episode, and it was time to install that kit.
Alright guys, there's not a square thing on this chassis, so we're just gonna kind of make an alignment jig for this thing and make sure that the frame doesn't move from where it is. We could try and like level the chassis up, but the whole chassis is twisted. It's a 70-year-old frame, and you're gonna have that on these big jobs, right? So my dad made this alignment dowel or alignment sleeve here to basically use the original leaf spring mount as sort of a alignment jig in order to make it so that our leaf spring relocation bracket isn't in the right orientation. So then we put a piece of all thread into the chassis. We're able to use that piece of all thread to make a mark on the frame, and then we can cut it out. Now, when I originally introduced this kit, I said that we were going to slip it up inside of the frame, but we decided to alter that on this car. We decided that we were going to cut the inner face out of the chassis and basically put it up against the outside. So we definitely want to make sure that the rest of the frame doesn't move around. So my dad put this piece of angle iron onto the rear part of the frame so that we can make sure that it doesn't move. So next we're gonna cut this guy out along here, then across here, and then down here, and then back across, and that will give us our cutout so that we can install the leaf spring relocation kit.
The next thing was we had to install our leaf spring sliders. Now, we showed off the leaf spring sliders that we had picked up in the previous episode. They are a Calvert racing piece that is designed to work with the factory 57 Chevy leaf spring. And I had these really nice plates made by the guys over at Sen Cut Sen, which would allow me to bolt the leaf spring slider to the chassis and be able to move the thing back and forth if we decided that we wanted to give it a little more travel one way or the other. After we got this welded into the car, we could mock up the leaf springs, but we still didn't have a rear differential for the car, so let's move on to that.
All right, guys, it's time to figure out the rear differential on the 57, so let me show you what we just picked up. This is a full axle kit from Speedway. Speedway is one of my favorite companies. They have by far the best selection of like little knickknacks and stuff that you just don't see from other companies, or you do and they're absurdly overpriced. They offer a lot of products like this for the average hot rodder to put together something that will hold a lot of horsepower, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. So I was looking for rear end housings on Facebook, and I noticed an ad come up for this Speedway kit that seemed to be like a really good deal. So what you're looking at here is a 52-inch hub-to-hub axle kit from Speedway. It includes the center section, and I opted for a spool with 35 splines, and then it comes with these axles that have a lot of spline that you will sort of cut to fit your housing of choice. I believe the kits that they sell that are pre-assembled come with the axles already trimmed to length, but since we did kind of a mix-match deal, we have to actually trim to fit. What I really like about this kit is it comes with all of the hardware. We got our wheel studs in here, other miscellaneous studs and bolts that go into the housing ends. So it's pretty much a full kit. The only thing that is missing is it didn't come with a drain plug, but I guess, can't get everything right. So I guess I'll buy a $2 drain plug. Woe is me. My dad is about to mark out the axle lengths. We just did a whole bunch of measuring. You got to be careful on these 9 inches. The spline on these spools is not centered with the housing. It's not centered with the pinion. It's actually offset over this way quite a bit. So you will have to have a long and a short axle. On like a Ford 88, they actually center the splines with the pinion, or it's slightly offset.
Yeah, it's offset because the axles are the same, and the pinion pin that goes through the differential is in the center. So the pinion itself is offset slightly.
Yeah, it's like 15/16, right?
A little bit less than that. It's probably like 7/16 or close to half an inch.
Okay.
But basically, it's half the diameter of the pin plus a little bit of clearance. So that pin's in the center. This pin's offset slightly.
Right. Yeah, my goal was to have the pinion centered in the car, just to make it easier for, the floors in the car, the transmission hump, and the drive shaft tunnel are relatively centered. So my goal was to have this pretty close to the center. It's okay if it's a little offset from where the engine is. It's okay if the drive shaft runs at a slight angle. But my goal was to have a centered pinion, and that's how these Speedway housings are set up. Also, what I noticed with this housing, obviously it's a fabricated sheet metal housing, and in their advertising material, it showed that they're much more rigid than your typical stock 9-inch. I noticed there's a lot of gusseting inside here. So it looks to be a really nice piece. It's actually a lot lighter weight than I was expecting, so we'll have to see how it holds up. So we should have a 35 spline spool, 370 gear, Daytona bearing assembly, and 1350 yoke setup for right around $2,000, and I'd say that's a pretty dang good deal.
considering that from a lot of other companies, you pretty much only get this piece here for more money than everything that we need for this car.
Alright, to install our brakes on this car, we have a couple challenges. And a lot of them have to do with the way that the Strange brake kit is set up. Now, they expect you to put this caliper bracket onto the axle before you put the bearing onto the axle. So it has this lip here, and that is what retains the axle into the rear end housing. And problem with this is my axle bearings are already installed on my axles, and they're kind of a pain to pull off and put back on. So what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate this lip here and make it so that this slips over the axle and the bearing, and then we will make a retainer that sits and sandwiches this whole assembly and pushes down into the center of this bracket here and holds our axle in place. The other problem is I ordered this flange for a big bearing Ford style housing end, and we need the big bearing Torino style housing end. The bolt pattern is a little bit different, but we have other issues that we have to deal with anyways, so it doesn't really matter. One of the problems with moving the wheel mounting surface so far inboard in the car is we will now have to make sure that we have enough clearance with the frame right here, and that means that if we mount the brake in the configuration that Strange wants it, unfortunately, our brake is probably going to have clearance issues with our frame when the rear end travels. So what I want to do is I want to reclock this thing. As you can see, I already have some marks that I have drawn out on the bracket here, and I want to reclock the thing so that the caliper is down a bit lower like this. That will give us plenty of room around the frame, and we should be good to go there. We will also drill the other housing pattern into the bracket, so that will solve that issue as well. The only problem is Strange has machined these nice little lightning slots here into the bracket, and we will have to add some weld in here and build that material back up so that we can then machine it flat, and then we will have a bracket that does what we need it to do. lightweight.
They're strange.
Yeah.
Very strange.
For the front suspension, my dad actually picked up these really nice tubular upper and lower control arms. The lower control arms that we received with this car were pretty well rotted out, and it was definitely time for them to be replaced. I'm not sure who makes this kit, but it turned out super nice. The spring and shock situation turned out to be a little bit difficult. I was trying to use some coilovers on the car, but the coilover style setup, where it has an adjustable spring collar and a sort of tapered spring that goes up to the spring diameter for the top of the spring, it didn't really register into the 57 frame quite right. It was designed for a totally different chassis, and I was just trying to make stuff work together. That definitely didn't really jive together. So I decided to dig out these coil springs right here. These are actually off like a 50s or 60s Corvette. A friend of ours, John, actually gave us these springs, and they ended up working on this car kind of perfectly. For the shock, I decided to go with these Calvert Racing 9010 style shocks. So hopefully that will wrap up the front suspension. For the spindle, we decided to go with a 2-inch drop spindle. If you guys aren't familiar with the concept of a 2-inch drop spindle, it's actually pretty ingenious. Basically, it takes the pin that your bearings and your rotor and everything sort of bolt to, and it moves it up 2 inches, which will effectively lower the car. The advantage to doing this is you don't change any of your suspension geometry, and you don't mess up any of the handling characteristics of your suspension, because all you've done is just take the pin and move it up. Also, with this 2-inch drop spindle, it came with a set of disc brakes for the car. This came from Classic Performance Products. Now, I gotta come clean here. I actually bought this kit for my dad's 57. I think it was actually for his birthday too. So big thanks to Dad. I'll have to buy him another kit when it comes time to do his. Leave some thanks pops down in the comments. Him and my mom definitely make this possible. I definitely couldn't do this whole YouTube thing without them. And this is just one small example of what I mean by that. Now, one of the worst things about the 57 Chevy is this fender lip right here. In fact, all of the Tri-5 Chevys struggle with this particular feature. That fender lip being so low and wrapping around the outside of the wheel makes it difficult to pull the wheels and tires off of your car. And with a drag and drive car, where we would prefer not to drive the car on our race tires, it becomes a necessity to be able to change your wheel and tire on a frequent basis. So we went to brainstorming, thinking, how do we make this easier? And my dad actually came up with a brilliant idea, and it is right in this box right here. So let's open the thing up and see what we got. Come on out. And it is this wheel right here. Now, as you guys know, we are not planning on tubbing or mini tubbing this build. And because of that, we can't fit a ton of tire on this car. So we decided to go with a 15x8 wheel setup, but we decided to go with something with 1 inch of back spacing. Now, in order to get a wheel like this, you would think it would be very expensive. And if you were talking about an aluminum wheel, you would be right. But if you go with a steel wheel like this one, it's actually not that expensive. And there is another reason that we decided to go with steel.
With a steel wheel, your wheel mounting flange is only about 1/4 inch thick, and therefore you can run a lot shorter wheel studs. And because we are running a shorter stud like that, that will provide us even more room for getting our wheel and tire on and off of the car. Now, it does come at the penalty of this wheel does weigh a little bit more than an aluminum wheel. But these wheels are only 22 pounds apiece. Even a super lightweight aluminum wheel is going to be in the neighborhood of 15 pounds. So we're not really talking about a ton of weight here. And as I have said in many videos in the past, doing a drag and drive is all about survival. You have to make it easy on yourself, as well as building a car that is reliable. Therefore, making our wheel and tire changes a lot easier, like this, is going to help us in the long run. If you guys follow Alex Taylor and her program with her 55 Chevy, they actually have to deflate the tires in order to get them on and off of the car. And that's even with disconnecting the shocks and lowering the rear suspension as much as possible. I don't want to do any of that, and therefore, I think this solution is going to work out great for us. We'll have to see if we can actually get the wheel and tire on and off of the car without even letting the suspension droop. That would be my ultimate goal, but if you want to look cool, unfortunately you got to deal with compromises. So if we have to do that, I'll have to live with it. Next, let's get some tires mounted up on these wheels and get them onto the car. Now that we had the front and rear suspension figured out on this car, it was time to drop it on the ground, roll it outside, and have a look. Alright guys, I hope that you are starting to see my vision for this car. This has been a lifelong dream of mine, and it's super cool to finally be able to build this car. Now in some of the previous shots you probably saw some of the turbo piping starting to get laid out for the car. But we're going to get into that in future episodes, and that's where I'm going to wrap this video off. And I'm happy to be able to say once again, if you want to support the channel, go into the description and buy a shirt. We are super thankful to everybody who decides to do that. With that, I'm going to end this video off here. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.